Welcome in and welcome back to Back of the Net. I am your host, as always, Nick Burt, with your weekend preview. It's a jam-packed weekend in the soccer, football world, whatever you want to call it. The first full slate of action of the 23-24 European season. We have two cup finals that are quite important-ish this weekend. I say ish for one of them because we'll get to that at the end of the show. I put that last because it probably shouldn't have made the show, but it did anyways. So, like I said, we got our first full slate of European football this weekend. We have Premier League, Bundesliga, La Liga, and Serie A previews. Three of those four already started this weekend. We'll get to that when we get there. And then we also have what we're going to start out with. One of the main setters of a set change, if you can tell, the ball has changed back here. We do have the 2023 World Cup final ball. The old ball has been replaced because it is the World Cup, Women's World Cup final, whatever you want to call it. It is the final, Sunday morning, 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I believe that equals out to 8 p.m. in Australia and Sydney. And we have Spain going up against England. This should be an intriguing match to watch. Two sides that are quite similar to each other, but are also on polar opposite sides of each other at the exact same time. We'll first go with the polar opposites. This team of Spain have very quality players. The problem is that their best players aren't here. It's the same problem with England. Their best players aren't there. England's best players aren't there because they're injured. Spain's best players are not at this World Cup because they officially quit the national team. This was before the World Cup. They were not thrilled with head coach Jorge Vidla's, tactics and methods. Those women gave the Spanish FA the option, I believe, of it's either them or him. They chose him. He is still obviously in a job. And those women are now out. They brought in obviously good replacement players to get to this point. But they still seem like a team that is, they don't want to be playing for this head coach. Compared to the other side, England, like I said, their best players aren't here because of injury. They've filled in those gaps. And Serena Wegman, the manager for England, has got this team as a cohesive unit. They look like a complete team out there, I'd say. You don't see like those players just going after it for themselves, kind of like you saw with the downfall of the U.S. team, I'd say. Also with that, Vladko Ananovsky did step down as U.S. manager. That's a different story for a different day. We are here focused on England and Spain. Like I said, these two teams are polar opposites on that side of things. One team actually playing for their coach and one doesn't want their coach to be there. But like I said, these obviously are the two best teams right now. They've both made it to the final. Yes, you could say both teams had an easy-ish run to the final, I'd say. I'd say Spain's was a tad bit harder. They had to go through the Netherlands in the quarters, Sweden in the semis, compared to England going through Colombia and Australia, which, Colombia and Australia are good sides. They're just not the level of Sweden and the Netherlands. I don't know if that's going to come back to haunt England, given that, they haven't played a team like Spain, I would say, yet in this tournament. I think this is going to be very cliche. Both teams are going to have an absolutely outstanding game. Both teams can easily capitalize on the smallest of mistakes from the other side, and it could be very quick. And that mistake turns right into a goal. Both teams are very good at that. But I think the bigger factor in this game is going to be the defensive side of the ball, where I do believe England is stronger. They've only, I believe, given up 2 goals this whole tournament from open play. They've given up penalties, bringing that total to, I believe, 5 or 6 total goals, somewhere around there. But only 2 goals from open play. This England defense has been quite outstanding this tournament. They're going to need to have another outstanding performance come Sunday morning or Sunday evening in Australia. And like I said, both teams are going to be can attack on those mistakes. So the defensive backline, I think, is going to be the key in this game. Now, another big key is on the England side that Serena Wegman has to decide is, are you going to put Lauren James in the starting lineup? Lauren James was out with a red card suspension for the quarterfinal and semifinal match. It was a 2-game suspension, so she's available for the final. But, do you change up a team that has just won 2 games? I'd say rather convincingly, given England's style, I should say, rather convincingly, more in the semifinal than in the quarterfinal. It's a tough decision because, Lauren James probably does make this team a tad bit better, but if she's coming off the bench as a super sub, that makes the England team even more dangerous. And I feel like that might be what Wegman decides to do, is put James on the bench as a super sub option in like the 60th or 65th minute to, get ramped up, or, if England are in the lead, just control the game basically by putting her in. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I don't know. I mean, obviously I am wearing England, so that's where I'm leaning in this game. Even though I've seen a lot of predictions, most of them have England winning this, but Spain are the favorites at the sportsbooks right now. But that's only through 90 minutes. To lift the trophy, they're both at the same odds, minus 115, which shows you that this is as even as a final as you could get. I do want to lean towards the England or draw bet. I feel like that's the side to play here, because this does feel like a game that could go to penalties. But it also does feel like a game that either side can win within 90. I just think England have the better opportunity to do that within the 90 than Spain. Spain has scored a lot of goals in those last 10 minutes, the 81st through 90th minutes throughout this tournament. England, like I said, have given up 2 goals in open play this whole tournament. That's going to be a big key. I think this is going to be the toughest test that Spain has faced in this tournament, and this is going to be England's toughest test that they've faced in this tournament. It's all you could ask for in a final. It's going to be quite interesting to watch at 6 o'clock in the morning. And then, right after that, you move into club football, which we're about to get to, but I feel like I do have to give an official prediction. I think England win this. I'll say 2-1. I won't say if it's full time or after extra time. I can't get a read on that, but I do think England will be lifting the trophy at the end of Sunday morning, I guess, Saturday or Sunday evening in Australia. Time zones. But like I said, after that game ends at, 8:30, 9 o'clock, whenever it ends, Eastern Standard Time, of course, you can move right into the club football. It's going to be on all weekend, whether it be in England, Spain, Germany, Italy, France, which we don't talk about France here, but let's just head over to England first. The Premier League match week 2 is upon us. It's actually already started, given that Nottingham Forest and Sheffield United played this afternoon / evening in England. Forest came away with a 2-1 victory, a Chris Wood goal in the 89th minute off a Serge Aurier cross that was just completely unexpected from me because, one, I kind of forgot that he was at Nottingham Forest and he signed there last year, and two, because I haven't seen him play like that since like his Spurs years. So Forest get a win. Sheffield United still pointless on the season. Like I said in my predictions, I think they will be going down. I don't really think it's going to matter. I thought Forest is another team that has, the possibility of going down, but might not. Who knows? With how bad the bottom of the league is, they probably won't. So we'll see about that. Moving into the Saturday slate, no 12:30 kickoff England time, so 7:30 in the U.S. Eastern Standard Time. So we basically only have 10 a.m. kickoffs, 12:30 kickoff, and a 3 p.m. kickoff. Ugh, those words not coming out well today. We'll start with a West London derby, a very, very intriguing game between Fulham and Brentford at the Craven Cottage. Both teams kind of seem on the same level right now, I guess I'd say. If I had to give an advantage to one, it's Fulham, but it's not by much. These two teams seem very even right now. It is still the beginning of the season, so theoretically everybody should be even, but you know what I mean. I feel like both are kind of on the same trajectory of mid-table right now. Neither team are really at risk of relegation. Neither team are really close to Europe, I'd say, at this point. So it's going to be interesting to watch this game. I'm going to give Fulham the advantage here, given that it's at the Cottage, but this really does reek of a 1-1 draw. It would be Brentford's second on the season, given their 2-2 draw at home against Tottenham week 1. This really does reek of a draw, and that's the way I'm going to play this game. The second game of the 10 o'clock window, Liverpool at home against Bournemouth. A lot's been talked about. Well, the last time that Liverpool played, Bournemouth in August was last year, and they won 9-0. I'm not saying 9-0 is going to happen this time. Liverpool are going to win this game, though. I don't think it will be close. I don't really give Bournemouth a real shot of getting points here. What was supposed to be the third game of this window was Luton Town Burnley. That game got postponed back in July when Luton Town told the Premier League, hey, Kenilworth Road's not going to be ready for that game. Postpone it. Our first game is, I believe, September 1st or somewhere around there now. We just need that little extra time to get things finished here. So just postpone that game. We'll play it later in the year. So that game will not be happening on Saturday. So it's the first match week where we don't have all 20 teams playing. That will get more common as we get down near the latter parts of the season. Wolves at home against Brighton. Brighton coming off a 4-1 victory against Luton Town. And they're playing a team, I believe, that is of a similar caliber of Luton Town right now. In Wolves, a team that I shouldn't say that Wolves should be compared to Luton Town, because Luton Town what they're doing is just, we've explained that before. Wolves are just a team in disarray right now. Gary O'Neill, I think, is going to try to right the ship. They almost got points away at Manchester United on Monday, I should say. VAR call, of course, didn't go their way, given that it was in Manchester. I don't see Wolves getting points here. I think De Zerbi ball takes over for Brighton, and they probably get a similar scoreline that they did against Luton Town. Probably like 3-1 or 4-1, I would believe. Going to be interesting to see, the final scoreline of that game. 12:30 kickoff. We have Tottenham at home against Manchester United. It's probably the match of the weekend. I'm not saying that with any bias involved, as the cardboard Tottenham Hotspur Stadium and the Spurs shirt book, loom over us here. I just think this game is going to be pure entertainment, and that's really all you can ask for from a football match. It's going to be interesting to see Postecoglou, first real home game, I should say, as Tottenham manager. It's going to be interesting to see what that team looks like playing at home. We saw how it played out last week on the road, which, technically right down the road, same city, not close, but you get the gist of what I'm going at here. So we'll see how Tottenham can use that home crowd advantage to their favor. And they're playing a really good Manchester United team. You didn't really see that on Monday. They got bailed out, I would say. They probably should have drawn that game. And we'll see how it plays out. And then in the 3 o'clock window, 3 o'clock windows are rarer in the Premier League. Usually you don't get them. Sometimes you do. We have I don't even remember, the Oil Classico, I think. I don't remember the officially unofficial term people are using for this one. The Oil Classico, I'll just go with it. Manchester City against Newcastle, of course. Oil Classico because the owners in Manchester City are the United Arab Emirates and the owners of Newcastle is Saudi Arabia. So given that, we saw Newcastle a 5-1 victory against an Aston Villa team people have a lot of belief in. They're now going to the Etihad, playing a Manchester City team, obviously. Won the treble last year. They won the UEFA Super Cup on penalties on Wednesday. So, a little bit of a fatigue factor possibly. This is going to be quite an interesting game. Because if that same team that beat Aston Villa 5-1 comes out to the Etihad, I think people might be a little surprised by this final result. I think Newcastle could edge out a victory if that happens. But then again, Erling Haaland is inevitable. But I'm going to think this game actually ends up being a draw. Like, we could possibly get a 2-2 or 3-3 draw. And that's probably the way I see this playing out. Sunday morning, Aston Villa at home against Everton. Everton, like we've mentioned, just a team that who knows where they're going. Aston Villa needed that bounce back game after the Newcastle debacle. I think they'll get that. They probably win 2-1. West Ham at home against Chelsea. Chelsea buying every player known to man. West Ham figuring things out, I think, before their European season kicks in. Going to be interesting to see how that plays out. I still think Chelsea probably get points here, the full 3. And it's going to be like a 1-0 game, probably. And then on Monday night in England, 3 p.m. here in the U.S., Crystal Palace against Arsenal. This feels like a sneaky game that Crystal Palace can take points from. But honestly, I just think Arsenal are too strong. I think they end up getting the 3 points here, probably winning 2-1. So given that is the weekend in England, let's check out the weekend in Germany. The Bundesliga officially kicked off this evening in Bremen. Werder Bremen faced off against the champions 11 straight, 12 straight, somewhere around there. Might be 10. I don't remember. They've won too much. Bayern Munich come away with a 4-0 victory as Sadio Mane brace goal in the 4th minute and the 90th minute. Harry Kane, his first start for Munich, a assist with that 4th minute goal, and he gets a goal, and I believe it was around the 70th minute, somewhere around there. And they go on to win 4-0. No real surprise there. It's Bayern Munich. So the slate for the rest of the weekend, you have Augsburg against Mönchengladbach. There's no, I don't really have any tidbits for these given that the teams haven't played yet. That comes more next week. You'll see when we do La Liga, I'll have a little bit more to add there. And then when we get to Serie A, we're kicking off this week, not a lot to add there. Bayer Leverkusen facing off against RB Leipzig. I guess I should do predictions also. I think Mönchengladbach and Augsburg, I think Gladbach comes away with probably a 1-0 victory. The Leverkusen-Leipzig game, I think Leipzig come away probably 2-1. Hoffenheim against Freiburg. I really like Freiburg in this game. Probably 2-0. Stuttgart against Bochum. Draw 1-1. I would say personally. Wolfsburg against Heidenheim. Heidenheim recently promoted. I think they're going to struggle this year, given that they were recently promoted. They'll probably be down at the bottom fighting relegation, giving the upper hand to Wolfsburg here. Dortmund and Köln close out the Saturday window. I'm high on both of these teams this year. Not as high to have them winning the title. Obviously, I already picked Leipzig to do that. I think Dortmund win this game, though, 3-1. On Sunday morning, Union Berlin, the only Berlin club in the Bundesliga as of this season, with Hertha getting relegated last year. They faced off against Mainz. I like Union in this game. Union 2-1. And then in the final game of the weekend, we have Eintracht Frankfurt against Darmstadt, the other recently promoted club this year. I think they're going to struggle too, just like Heidenheim, and that's going to give the advantage to Frankfurt, and I think they win that. I'll go 3-0. So given that's your Bundesliga preview-ish for their week one. Like I said, more detail next week when we actually know what's happening with these clubs. We move down south now from Germany to La Liga. This is their match week 2. We already had 2 matches this week kick off this Friday. Mallorca at home lose 1-0 or 0-1 technically to Villarreal. A Villarreal team I still think is going to finish in Europe this year, even though they lost Unai Emery, but that was last year mid-season. They've had enough time to develop. In Valencia, get a 1-0 win at home against Las Palmas. Las Palmas promoted from last year. Another team I think is going to struggle. A lot of these promoted teams this year are going to struggle. I don't really see any of them. Maybe Burnley are the only ones that I think are somewhat assured of the safety this year. And even Burnley, I could make a case for that they're not safe. But a lot of these promoted teams just don't have the quality this year, I'd say. And so now looking at what's coming up, Real Sociedad, gotta get that pronunciation correct, against Celta Vigo on Saturday. Almeria against Real Madrid, and then Osasuna against Bilbao. I'd like to try to get these names correct. Out of these 3 games, it's got to be the Real Madrid game that you look at the most here, given that it's Real Madrid. Going to be interesting to see how they come into, their second week of this season. Injuries starting to become a problem already for this Real Madrid squad. So it's going to be quite interesting to see how this whole season plays out, because if it's going to be a season plagued by injuries, you're not going to get the best Real Madrid team, which probably costs them the title. Sunday, you have Granollers against Getafe, Barcelona against Cádiz, and then Real Betis against Atletico Madrid. Getafe and Barcelona played last week in match week 1. It was a 0-0 draw at Getafe. Questionable VAR calls once again. That's not just an England thing of VAR calls being questionable. Barcelona playing their first official league game away from Camp Nou. They're playing at the Estadio Lucas Campos, I believe is the official name. The Olympic Stadium from the 1992 Olympics. With Camp Nou being renovated, they will be playing there this year, and I believe next year. I could be wrong on that next year part. But they're playing the whole season away from their actual home. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And I think the Betis Atletico Madrid game has a lot of potential, given that both teams, I think, are going to be quite good this year. Probably both teams will be fighting out for Champions League spots come the end of the year. So going to be interesting to watch that game because, both teams are quite good. I think they might put on a good performance. Obviously, Atletico Madrid don't play a attractive style of football. But, sometimes they can shock you. And on Monday, we have 2 more matchups to close out the match week. You have Deportivo Alaves against Sevilla, and you have Granada, I believe it is, against Rayo Vallecano. Sevilla obviously have not gotten into their European season yet. They're coming off the loss to Manchester City in that Super Cup on Wednesday on penalties. They've lost their last 6 Super Cups, so that's not really a stat that's going to matter here, but just a fun stat to share. It's going to be, I think that's going to be an interesting match. I think both teams match up quite well between Sevilla and Alaves, but I still like Sevilla to come away with a win there. So given that is Serie A for match week 2. And finally, we'll move to the last league that we will mostly talk about here with, in respects to Europe. It is Serie A kicking off this weekend. The only league of the ones we talk about that has not kicked off their match week yet, which, good work on that one because that means we get a full preview. Saturday, the game to kick off the season, there's 2 of them because they both start simultaneously. Empoli facing off against Hellas Verona. Empoli obviously lost their goalkeeper, Viccaro, to Tottenham, so it's going to be interesting to see how they replace him this year. And then you got Fremante Calico against Napoli. Napoli, the defending Scudetto champions. I guess Scudetto technically means champions, but you know what I mean. I don't think they're in for another run to the title this year, but they're still going to be within that top 4 discussion, so that should be an interesting game to watch there. You have Inter Milan against I believe it's AC Monaco, not AS, or Monza, I should say. I don't know where Monaco came from. Seeing the ASAC, it's Monza. Just don't put the AS or AC in front of it. It's just Monza. You might know Monza is, where the Italian Grand Prix is for F1. They also do have a football club that's in their second consecutive year of Serie A play. Then on Sunday, you have AS Roma at home against Salernitana. I believe Guillermo Ochoa is still the goalkeeper after signing with Salernitana after the World Cup in 2022. AS Roma, obviously under Jose Mourinho, trying to get to Champions League football for Roma for the first time in 6 years. This is the start of that run. The other match in that 12:30 window on Sunday is Sassuolo against Atalanta. I like it, Atalanta, this year. I don't think I had them in my predictions finishing top 7. They were close, but I still think that they're a team that could easily finish top 4, even though I didn't predict that. I think they're a quite good squad. Going to be interesting to see how that plays out. Then in the 2:45 window, you have Lecce against Lazio. Hugo Lloris is apparently not going to Lazio now, given that Maurizio Sarri, the manager, doesn't really want him. So I don't know what to think of Lazio this year. They might be the team that drops out of that top 7 for Atalanta to fit in. And then the other game in that 2:45 window is Udinese against the Giants, the old gray lady, Juventus. Juventus probably wins this game, I don't even know, 2-0 probably. And then on Monday, you have Torino facing off against Cagliari. Claudio Ranieri, the manager that led Leicester City to the Premier League title in 2016, returns to Serie A as the manager of Cagliari. I believe that was the club that he played for. It was the club where I believe he had his first head managing job. Leads them back to Serie A. And then in the final game of the weekend, you have Bologna against AC Milan, my pick to win the title. Going to be quite interesting to see how they play out this year. Given that, we're getting close to the end here, which means I did mention there is one more final this weekend that probably shouldn't be included in the show because I don't really talk about this side of the world's league soccer much because I just don't. I feel like there's more storylines in Europe than there is here in America. But it is the Leagues Cup final this weekend. The first ever Leagues Cup, the battle between MLS and Liga MX sides has led to this. There was one Liga MX side in the semifinal. They lost, and now we are here with Nashville SC hosting Inter Miami. I mean, you can call this the Leagues Cup. You can also call it the Lionel Messi Invitational, given that's the only thing you've heard about this competition the whole time it's happened this past month. His 6 goals in 5 games or something like that. Or 7 goals in 6 games, somewhere around there. And I don't see that changing. If Lionel Messi is playing for Miami, they're probably winning. That's going to be the biggest storyline in the second half of the MLS season, given that the MLS has been off this whole time for the Leagues Cup. Inter Miami still sit in last place in the Eastern Conference. I believe they have 10 games to go. Once they get back to play, I believe it's next week. And like I said, any game Lionel Messi plays in, Inter Miami are going to win. So it's going to be interesting to see how he can lead them through these final 10 games if they can sneak into the playoffs and then probably win the MLS Cup. But first piece of silverware on the line tomorrow, actually, in Nashville against Nashville SC. I'm not going to say it's going to be an interesting watch because I'm pretty sure Miami are going to win this game like 2 or 3-1. So given that, that is going to be it for Back of the Net. This Friday edition, this weekend preview, will be back on Monday to recap all of it. Probably before that, there will be a top of the perch Tottenham Manchester United recap. So stay tuned for that. And then we will be back on Monday with Back of the Net, a full recap of all the games that we just talked about, basically. And then, if anything else pops up. So thank you so much for tuning in. If you stumbled across this video, like, subscribe, tell anybody you know about it. And like I said, we will be back on Monday for another episode of Back in the Net.